Good afternoon. How are you? Happy Easter. And this is toward the end of the day, and there's like a golden sunshine, and the temperature's not bad, and so it's very pleasant. We did our farm chores and went off to Middleburg, where we haven't been frequently, in part because we've distanced ourselves. And we didn't know if it would be overrun because it was Easter Sunday, and it wasn't, so it was very pleasant. We managed to get coffee outside. And we ran into some great friends who are the son and daughter-in-law of a judge who I'd always thought kindly of, and apparently he thought kindly of me, Judge John Ryan. How could we not have liked each other? And we talked about what a wonderful man he was. And this is a day to be thinking about people like that. We were lucky to run into the Ryans so that we could have that conversation. And it's people like that that make life, well, I don't want to say worthwhile, because it's more than that. It's not a subsistence. It's actually make life shiny, exciting, energizing. It feels like this is the purpose of life, and for many it is. Particularly, you see grandparents with grandchildren. It's like the necessary arc of a life is about family and those connections. And so I found some small records that were hard to play, and today I got a turntable that could play them at 78 RPM, revolutions a minute. And I played them, and it was my mom and dad in the 40s during the war exchanging records from where they were across the country. And the one of their love song, their favorite love song, was Long Ago and Far Away. And so they sang it to each other. I have to tell you, my mom had a better voice, although I couldn't tell from the crackling of these make-it-yourself records. My mom is somewhere at Broadway, Times Square. That's where she made hers, and my dad, wherever he was, and he never left the country, but he was in service in California and also in Arkansas, and he was in the Army Air Force. I guess basically he was an engineer. So it sort of brought me back to my own family, because I am the last of the Mohegans. My younger brother, my mom, dad have all passed on. And so this is a good day for a rebirth of how we feel about family, and also to find out what it is about our character that makes us who we are and makes us a person that you want to know and spend time with, and that they're enriching you and you're enriching them. I heard some announcers saying, oh, last week it was like those times in the 60s. Now, why was it today like it was in the 60s? Nixon and his gang of thieves ignored the law, ignored the Constitution. In fact, many of you know the Frost interview in which, and I'm paraphrasing, but the gist of it was, Nixon said that when the president does something, it is the law. And this is a federalist notion from those in the extreme, and we have a bunch of them these days. And it wasn't that the law and the justification came up from the people. It was a ruling state. Now, that's Nixon. And they say, how did that happen then? Well, what were the demonstrations about in the 60s? Whether you agree or disagree, it was because the law and the Constitution was not observed that demonstrations involving filling up the streets and shouting and screaming and carrying signs and pressuring representatives. I remember going to the Hill as a college student, and believe it or not, in those days, you could actually thumb a ride from New York all the way to D.C., and I did that. And I saw a congressman on the west side, and he was he was a real leader, and he had just had a fight on the floor, and he had a bad case of cancer at the time, and he was fighting the good fight. And I was affected by what seemed to be his inability to make the change that seemed so sensible at the time. And history has proven us correct, that we were being lied to up and down about how we were fighting the war and what our chances were. And that it was basically, well, how many people can we lose as compared to how many people can you lose? And so I wondered if this man, so dedicated, couldn't make a change, what would make the change? And the answer was we the people. Not as fast as we'd like, and anyone can guess whether the assassinations that were going on played a factor in the delay in getting a result. So here we are, and this week we had demonstrations in Tennessee in which instead of a proportionate discipline, if one was appropriate, they kicked out of the chamber 2 elected delegates who were black, and a third person, a woman, who had supported their effort. They allowed her to remain in the chambers. And she said herself, look at this, what does it mean? You know, an older woman stays and 2 black leaders do not. That's the kind of thing. We have a judge in Texas saying, the abortion pill, forget that. We have such an array of things that don't make sense, that defy the law and the Constitution. Got a Supreme Court justice that says, he asked someone, who knows, maybe the janitor, hey, do you think I should keep all this stuff? Yeah, go ahead, keep it, do it. This is the grounding of a democracy in ruin, because when the people can't rely and trust on the government enough that they don't feel they have to protest, well, that's a model for civilization. But when those who have the power exercise it ultra vires, that is beyond the power they were granted, in defiance of the public will, in contradiction of common sense, in contradiction of the law and the Constitution, then you have a situation that is dangerous. And I've gone over this from time to time about how could we stand in the wind that would blow if all the laws of the land lay flat. And that's what we're dealing with. Now, we had a victory in the right direction when Trump had to stand, be arrested, give fingerprints, be arraigned, and be told to watch his step while he's released pending trial. Now, that's a good step in the right direction. But you see that the failure of the system is prompting people elsewhere to do more. That is to run a woman for the Supreme Court of the state, because that Supreme Court is corrupt. The governor is corrupt. The legislative body is corrupt. What do? And the answer can be violence. It should not be. But we're playing with fire here. Because if you can't trust your government, what do? And that's why we have to encourage the politicians who on this Easter Sunday said wonderful things to do some of those things on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and the days following. Because if we don't, the democracy that we brag about, the republic that we seek to preserve, that Franklin warned us you can have a republic if you can keep it, all of that's at risk. And this is so serious because America thought of itself as beyond these kinds of dangers. How that could be after the internal wrangling we've had in this country, and not just the Civil War, in my own lifetime, what we had with the Vietnam War, what we had with Iran-Contra, what we had with Iraq, what we had with Trump. Each of these is a body blow to a democratic government. And we cannot allow our democracy to fail. So, a little meandering. Oh, and by the way, I made a mini tape when I met the Ryans in Middleburg, because they asked, how do we do this? And I said, we hold in this left hand of mine a phone, and I look at it from time to time, because I think I should see the ground beneath my feet so that I don't fall. And I talk. And then when I finish talking, I turn it off and I keep walking. So we did a little thing on the streets of Middleburg, and I'll post that as well. And the difficulty with it was couldn't see the screen. The sun was so bright, I couldn't see the screen to see if we were in the picture or not. So I apologize for that. In the meantime, I say goodbye to you from my cathedral of wonderful trees all around us, from which we derive the strength, the inspiration to make the world a living place that works with us, for us, and that we do it all together. And we do it against those who would destroy what's the most valuable thing that a democracy has to offer: freedom and equality. Bye-bye.